Hello everyone and welcome back. I had a little bit of a Valentine's Day surprise for you. I know I'm a couple days late, but I wanted to give you one of my short stories early before the collection comes out. I think you're going to really like this one. If you're new to the channel, my name is Truth McNutt. I would really like to become an author full time, and this is a channel basically just telling you what I'm about, showing you my writing. If you've seen my drink making videos before, this is going to be a little bit different, less ASMR factor. My reading voice and my ASMR voice are very different, so in either case, I hope you enjoy it. This short story is called LOVESTRUCK. Now, I had to completely write this down on paper because it was all in my notes on my phone, and I didn't have any other means to read it while recording because I also record with my phone. So we are kind of at the mercy of whether or not I can read my own handwriting. I don't think it's so bad, but we're going to see. And if you are sensitive to horror, if you get a little squeamish around things like that, if you are a little freaked out by all things that go bump in the night, especially medical things, there is a lot of medical style horror in this. This might not be for you. But in either case, I hope you enjoy it. If you're a sicko like me, stick around. LOVESTRUCK. Find your perfect someone. Come on down for our Valentine's Day special, 30% off services. Cupid Matchmaking LLC leads the dating market in singles over 30 for the 5th year in a row. With a 100% satisfaction guarantee, who can turn down this offer? Don't wait. Make your appointment today. Elijah sighed as the pop-up ad invaded his screen. The video played on repeat as he hovered his mouse over the X, the gaudy pink and white logo pulsing as if with a heartbeat. He had heard of this place before. A friend or two had even fallen for their scam. The special barely made a dent in the price. Most people had to take out loans for their service, at least before they came out with financing options. The price of love, he supposed. He clicked it away, resuming his research. The screen listed the top 5 tips for finding a partner without using dating apps. Unfortunately, going out or finding a hobby hadn't worked, and he had a thing about dating coworkers, so that left few options in this swipe right world. He could always put out a personal ad. No, that comes off too desperate. Maybe a friend could help him find someone. No, they were all out of female friends who were interested. Elijah had considered that maybe he was too picky, but if he was going to spend the rest of his life with someone, he felt it should be as perfect as it can get. So, back to the dating apps he went. As an average man in his 30s, he blended in with a lot of his competition. Scrolling through his profile pictures again, they all kind of looked, well, everything the antonym of exciting was. He had managed to avoid the single male trifecta. He didn't have any photos of him with a dog, a guitar, or an unimpressive fish and a thumbs up. Instead, he had selfies and cropped group photos, all showing him with a fake-looking smile and the same bland clothing anyone else's age wore. Elijah also considered that he may not be confident enough. He was aware, but working on it sounded harder than joking about it. Besides, making a date laugh was more promising than wooing a potential partner by trying to be a better man. Both scenarios hadn't worked anyway. Elijah scrolled through his meager responses for matches. All ranged from asking how tall he was to his salary. Was this all the singles scene had to offer? Conditional love? Whatever happened to romance? Another pop-up on his computer screen startled him from his spiraling. It was the same ad. Find your perfect someone. He sighed, moving his mouse over to the X again. He paused. What if? I guess I'm a sucker too, he muttered to himself, moving to click on the link to make an appointment. 36 hours and a $1,000 deposit later, Elijah arrived at the agency. Dressed in jeans, a t-shirt, and a flannel, long hair pulled back into a loose tail, he wondered if he should have dressed nicer. No, that's silly. It's just a match interview. He did have the decency to shower, though. The lobby looked exactly like he thought it would. Pink walls, white molding, furniture overgrown with frilly laces and bows. He considered vomiting, but the color would clash with the aesthetic. Behind the desk sat a plump woman, seemingly in her 40s. She looked at him warmly, lacing her hands in front of her. "Good afternoon. Do you have an appointment?" He nodded, handing his phone to her with the information pulled up. Yes, Elijah Tanner, for an interview at 4 o'clock. She smiled, holding his phone with one hand and typing on her keyboard with the other. Elijah glanced around as she worked, trying to seem nonchalant. Hopefully he didn't look as nervous as he felt. Why was he nervous? It was just an interview. She handed the phone back to him. They will call you back shortly. He nodded again, moving to sit. Then he hesitated. This is kind of a stupid question, but does this actually work? I mean, I just tell you things about my life, and you find someone who mixes well. She giggled, nodding enthusiastically. Every one of the clients I've met say they just can't live without their newfound love. Don't worry, honey. We'll find your perfect match. She winked, turning back to her computer. It wasn't long until his name was called. A handsome man in a pastel pink doctor's coat with a clipboard guided him to a small, office-sized room. It had a small table with a chair on either side and a large mirror on the wall to the left. It reminded him of a police interrogation room. Have a seat and we'll be with you shortly, the man said, handing him a clipboard and a pen. In the meantime, please fill this out. It's all questions from the initial appointment page, but we need to make sure everything is accurate. The man smiled apologetically as he walked out and shut the door. Elijah waited until he was alone to sit, setting the clipboard in front of him. Leaning his chin on his palm, he started with the first page. Question 1. Which of the following describes you best? He filled in the bubble for a man in search of a man or woman. Most of his friends and family didn't know his preferences, and he honestly didn't think they needed to know. Question 2. Where would your ideal first date be? He penciled in his favorite arcade bar. The food was good and inexpensive, plus he thought it would be fun to bond over a shared interest like games. The room smelled sweet all of a sudden. That was weird. They must have one of those hidden air fresheners plugged in somewhere. Question 3. What matters more to you, looks or personality? He figured the question would be on here, but he still thought it was incredibly shallow. He filled in the bubble for personality. Elijah yawned. He really shouldn't have stayed up so late last night. Hopefully, this wouldn't take too long. His eyes felt heavy. Question 4. What is your blood type? Even when filling out the initial application, he thought it was a strange question. Maybe it was tied to the zodiac sign thing somehow? In any case, he filled in the bubble for a positive. When would the interviewer get in here? Maybe it was the empty surroundings, but Elijah was starting to doze off a little. He pushed the clipboard to the side, folding his arms and resting his head in them. A quick 5-minute snooze should be fine. Then he'll at least be alert for the questions they'll have for him. He was almost asleep when the door opened. He heard hurried footsteps entering. A hand took one of his arms from under his head, lifting it before letting it fall to the table. He's out. Take him to room 3. Elijah was fully sedated before he knew what had happened. He was cold. His limbs felt like ice. They ached. Elijah moved to stretch, his arms trying to raise from their positions straight down his sides. He couldn't move. Something rattled as he tried to lift his arms. Groggy, he opened his eyes. The odd feeling and the soft beeping of monitors dragged his consciousness out of the dark. Snapping back, he gasped, immediately choking on the tube in his throat. Pain seared through his body, making him lurch and writhe in his restraints. He was locked down head to toe, barely able to move an inch. His cries of agony escaped as barely a whisper, the machine keeping him alive blocking his vocal cords. His lungs burned as he fought the ventilator, but that was hardly a comparison to another, more alien sensation. Machines around him sounded in a cacophony, assaulting his already overstimulated brain. His thrashing loosened the band around his forehead, allowing him to look down. His chest was completely open, skin pulled back and ribs cracked free. He watched with horror as his lungs spasmed with his attempts to scream and the ventilator trying to establish a rhythm. Tears blurred his vision as he tore his eyes away. He slammed his head against the operating table, praying for this nightmare to end. He was going to die. If this didn't stop, he wanted to die. Pain. So much pain. Now, calm yourself, a voice said over his struggling. He looked toward the sound, shock setting in. A spindly man stood by the operating table, a needle in his gloved hands. He deftly injected it into the IV line in Elijah's arm before sweeping his sweat-drenched hair out of his face. Relief washed over him as the pain faded, but dread swelled as he found himself paralyzed. The machines around him stopped alarming as they took over again. "That should help with the pain until we can get you back to sleep. Stay still. I have a job to do." The man's voice was kind, but raspy, like he hadn't spoken in years. Elijah couldn't see his hair under his scrub cap, and the mask hid his features, but he had piercing blue eyes. He studied Elijah's face as he gently rolled his head back to the center of the table and clicked the strap back into place. "I bet you're wondering what's going on. To be honest, you weren't supposed to wake up yet," the man said, walking out of sight. Fear pierced through him. What did that mean? "Don't worry, you won't remember any of this after we put you back out." Rattling of metal on metal. At the very corner of his vision, he watched a cart roll up next to his head. It was low enough to see the instruments scattered across it, a machine in the middle. The man picked up a clamp. Elijah wanted to squirm, to escape, to call for help, anything. He could only lay there and listen. The anesthesiologist quit, as you can probably tell. We've had to do our own drugs for our procedures lately. I guess I didn't get the dosage right. Unless you lied about your weight on your application? He did. He always had been considered too skinny by unrealistic beauty standards. He didn't think it would matter. He was wrong. He listened as something was clamped, the hinge squeaking slightly. Elijah watched the ceiling as the man did something that jostled his vision. His stomach churned at the thought of someone digging around in his chest cavity. "Someone should be in here soon to put you back to sleep, but for now, I think I owe you an explanation." The man picked up something that looked like a mechanical pencil with a wire connecting it to the machine on the cart. Leaning down, he pressed a few buttons before moving out of sight. A high-pitched fizzling noise came from his chest as the man worked, a burning smell reaching his nose. "We're in the matchmaking business, but Cupid's arrows just aren't landing like they used to. No one has a soulmate anymore, and everyone leaves behind them a trail of toxic relationships they each blame on the other, disappointing one-night stands, and empty ice cream tubs." Another round of fizzling and pops. More smoke. Elijah's hearing in his left ear muffled as a tear flowed into it. "So, we make soulmates. Well, part of them anyway." More fizzling. Then the man placed the pencil to the side and dropped something onto the tray beside Elijah's head. He could just barely see it, red with blood, twitching as life left it. "Is that—" "Don't worry, you won't need that old thing anymore. Who needs a broken heart when you can have a brand new one to match your true love, Elijah's vision blurred with terrified tears. What was he doing to him? The man leaned over him, pulling his sleeve over a bloodied glove and dabbing his tears away. Blood dripped into his eyes, blinding him momentarily. "None of that now. This is a happy day." As fresh tears cleared the blood, the man disappeared again, his footsteps moving a few yards away, the clinking of glass echoing around the room. He returned, holding a large jar. He clutched it to his chest in an almost protective hold, hugging it excitedly. "Your soulmate already has his. He finished his procedure about an hour ago and is recovering. He's quite the looker. You're going to have such a happy life together." Soulmate? Want to see? Even if he could respond, he would have refused. He didn't want to be any part of this. He wanted to go home and forget this whole experience. The man revealed the jar, holding it above his gaze. His eyes crinkled in the corners with a grin hidden behind the mask. Through the red-smeared glass, Elijah saw a heart. It was completely white, floating in yellowish fluid. It had a barcode on the jar, the number above it reading 17823-B. "Your brand new heart. It was just made last week along with its twin, clean, fresh, and unbroken, perfect for making new memories." The man ducked out of sight again, the jar popping as it opened. Its smell was pungent, singeing his nostrils. Glass clashed to the floor as the man tossed the jar, not caring about the mess. The man held the heart above Elijah's head for him to see, fluid dripping from it. "Happy thoughts. We're almost done." The man went back to his chest, picking up the pencil again in one hand. A door opened. "Ah, Dick, great timing. I was just telling Mr. Tanner about the marvelous life he's about to start." Footsteps quickly approached, hands slamming to the table above Elijah's head. Another man in a black suit with slicked back hair hovered over him, a furious look on his face. "You let him wake up?" he growled, moving to the side where the surgeon stood. "I didn't let him do anything. He woke up because he lied on his papers. He isn't in any pain. I gave him something, but I couldn't stop the whole procedure just to knock him out again." The man in the suit hurried to the side, rifling through something he couldn't see. He returned with a large syringe filled with a white fluid. "I would appreciate it if you didn't approach my sterile field without the proper attire, Dick," the surgeon said snidely. "Sterile? Since when do you care about sterile, Max? And I told you to call me Rich if Richard is too hard for you." Max snickered, still working intently. "Dick is hard enough," he muttered to himself, giggling at his own joke. Richard approached the table, injecting the fluid into the IV line. He pointedly avoided looking at what Max was doing. He even had the decency to look sickened. "I'll never understand how you can do that to people." Elijah's mind fuzzed, sleep taking him once again. "It's the price of love, I suppose." Elijah startled awake as a door slammed. Lurching up from the table, he wiped drool from his chin. He was sore and stiff, probably from sleeping hunched over. How long had he been out? "Elijah Tanner, glad to finally meet you." A busty blonde woman in her 20s approached the table, reaching a hand forward. "My name is Emily. I'll be taking your questionnaire today." He took her hand, shaking it and smiling shyly. Hopefully she didn't catch him napping. He glanced in the mirror. Thankfully, he didn't look too frazzled. "I'm sorry," he said, handing the clipboard to her. "I didn't fill out everything." She smiled, glancing over the page. "No worries at all. You got the first few, at least." She set it down and slid her own clipboard over it. "Now, are you ready to find your soulmate?" The interview only lasted an hour, but it was already dark when he left the office. Time flies when you're nervous, he supposed. On his way home, he swung by the convenience store. His throat was a little sore. Luckily, he had enough points for a free drink. The fluorescent lights were nearly blinding as he entered, making a beeline for the tea station in the back. As he poured himself some hot water, he noticed someone approaching. A man with short-cropped blonde hair joined him at the bench and began making some tea as well. Something felt different. A magnetism pulled his attention to the stranger. He couldn't help but glance at him as he worked. He was at least 5 inches taller than Elijah, lean and muscular. He had amber eyes and a light sprinkling of freckles across his nose. Shit, he caught him staring. The man grinned at him, a faint blush rising to his face. He nodded a greeting as he walked past him and towards the counter to pay. Elijah stood dumbstruck. Could this be it? The feeling he had been searching for? His phone buzzed in his pocket, making him jump. It was a text from a matchmaking agency. "Hello, Elijah. Thank you for taking the time to come out today. It just so happens we have already found your match." Attached is his picture and contact information. "Enjoy your life of bliss." Excited, he opened the attachment. They found someone so soon? Wait. No, it couldn't be. Elijah looked up, confused. At the counter stood the blond man, tea in one hand and phone in the other. He was looking right at him. Elijah approached. "Hey, are you—" "Yeah, I'm Avery. And you're Elijah." And Elijah was, for lack of a better term, love-struck. Thank you once again for joining me for this reading. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think in the comments. And once again, this will be part of the short story collection that I will be publishing towards the end of the month or the beginning of next month. I am really excited to see what your guys' thoughts are, and happy late Valentine's Day.